Okay, so I want to talk about adding and subtracting polynomials. Now, the previous video I showed you how to find common denominators. We have monomials and we have polynomials. Now, in order to add and subtract, we have to rewrite the fractions with the same denominator. And you know that requires, from previous things you've done, you have to multiply the top and the bottom of a fraction by the same thing in order to add and subtract. Let me give you an example. Suppose I wanted to add 2/3 and 5/4. So we figure out the common denominator between 3 and the 4, which is 12. But in order to change it to a 12, we've got to multiply this fraction by 4, top and the bottom. This one we got to multiply by 3, top and the bottom. Then we add the numerators only. We're going to be doing the same thing, but with variables. Let's start with something simple. Let's say I have 3/5 plus 4/x. Now remember, I said the LCD has to contain everything in the first denominator, so we have to include a 5, and it's got to have something, it's got to have whatever they're not sharing from the second denominator. Now notice the second denominator has an x, so over here I also have to have an x. I've got to have the 5 and the x. That means I'm going to have two fractions, and the denominator is going to be a 5 and an x. Now, if I want this 5 to become a 5x, I'm going to have to multiply it by something. Here's, I think, an easy way to do it. Highlight the original denominator. Whatever's not highlighted, that's what you're going to multiply by. And then we'll get 3x. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to highlight the x because that was the original. So that means we've got to multiply this fraction by 5. So if we started, this one was a 5, then it needed to be a 5x. We got to multiply by x. This one needed a 5x. It had the x. We got to multiply by 5. Once we get the common denominator, then we just add the numerators. Add the numerators. This would be the common denominator. Alright, let's say we had 3/7x squared plus 5/2x. Now remember, the common denominator must have everything from the first denominator. The second denominator, we have to find out what they're not sharing. Well, this denominator has a 2. They're not sharing a 2, so I include the 2. But this bottom also has an x, but we're already sharing the x's. So my common denominator is 14x squared. That means my two denominators, we've got to multiply, we've got to rewrite them. Now, you always got to ask yourself, okay, what number times 7 equals 14? Well, I know 2 times 7 equals 14. Notice, though, I had an x squared and I still got an x squared. So my x's didn't change, so we just multiply the top by the 3. Multiply the 3 by the 2, and we'll get 6. Now over here, we gotta do a couple extra things. First, we look at the 2 and the 14. We have to multiply by 7, top and the bottom. Now, notice I had 1x here. Notice I had 1x. Let me circle it. There was 1x. Now it's 2 x's. So I'm going to need another x. So we've got to multiply the top and the bottom by another x. So we get 35x squared. 35x in the top. Add the numerators. And your denominator stays 14x squared. So you're always multiplying the top and the bottom by what will give you the new denominator. Let's try. Alright, I want to do this one. This is a whole number plus a fraction. Now, when you're dealing with whole numbers, you want to put them over 1 so that you've got 2 fractions. I'll just rewrite this. 6 over 1 plus 1 over x. Now, let's find the common denominator. It's a combination of both denominators. So it's a 1 times an x, so it's just an x. So now, my denominators are going to have an x. Now let's come over here to this fraction, and let's see what we need to multiply by. This one, I hope you see that I need to multiply by an x. I don't have an x, now I do have an x. We got to multiply the top and the bottom by an x. Now this one, notice nothing changed in the denominator. So we're just going to multiply, we're technically just multiplying by 1, so we just end up with 1. Whoops. Combining them together, we'll get 6x plus 1. Let's do one like this. This is a monomial and a binomial. Alright. We have to include the first, whatever's here has to go here. Now, this is a binomial. I have to include this binomial as part of my LCD. They do not match. So we have to make them match with the common denominator. Now that's going to require me to multiply these by something. Here's where the highlighting comes in. This was the original. Notice I didn't highlight the x minus 5. Since I didn't highlight the x minus 5, that's what has to go in the numerator. Over here, let's highlight the x minus 5. What's not highlighted is the x, so that's what has to go in the numerator. Okay, now we're going to rewrite these fractions as one big fraction. Do the distributive property. 4x minus 20 plus 3x. Add like terms in the numerator. this is my final answer. So I think highlighting what was already there may help. All right, let's do one like this. We got 2 over x minus 1 plus 3 over x plus 2. My LCD will be a combination of both binomials since they are different. My LCD will have an x minus 1 and it'll have an x plus 2 all at the same time. So we're going to rewrite these denominators. So now they both have 2 binomials. And we're also going to be multiplying the tops by something. Now, again, I'm going to highlight this was the original. I didn't highlight the x plus 2, so x plus 2 has to go in the top. Back to the highlighter. Notice this was originally in the problem. The x minus 1 is not highlighted, so it's got to go in the top. Now we're going to do the distributive property. 2x plus 2 plus 3x minus 1 over x minus 1, x plus 2. Combine like terms. And we get this. All I can do, which is a lot, but still. All right, let's do this one. You got to be careful with this one. Okay, LCD. It has to contain everything over here. From the second fraction, it has to contain whatever they're not sharing. Well, notice they're not sharing a 4, so we got to include the 4. And they're not sharing a single y, so we have to include the single y. So the common denominator will now be a 4 and a y plus 5. And then we also have to change the tops. All right. Highlighter. This was the original. Since I didn't highlight the 4y, that's what has to go in the numerator. This one, the 4 and the y were the original. So I have to put a y plus 5 in the numerator. Do the distributive property. 8y plus 3y plus 15. Combine like terms. And we get this. That's the final answer. Now, let's do some where we have to factor our denominators. Let's say we have 2x, x squared minus 16, plus x over x minus 4. Now, you've always got to check to see if you can factor, especially, if it's a binomial or a trinomial. This is a difference of 2 squared. The second one I can't factor. All right, LCD. It has to have everything from the first denominator. Now, look at the second one. Are they sharing the x minus 4? And the answer is yes, so we don't include it twice. So my new denominator is x minus 4, x plus 4. X minus 4, x plus 4. Now let's figure out what we got to multiply the top by. I'm going to highlight. This was the original. This was the original. I don't see anything extra in the bottom. So really we're just multiplying by 1. Over here, x minus 4 was the original. X minus 4. I didn't highlight the x plus 4, so it's got to go in the numerator. Now let's simplify. 2x plus x squared plus 4x x squared plus 6x over x minus 4, x plus 4. Okay, let's do some more where we have to factor. A lot of these are going to be, you're going to have to factor. All right, let me find some good ones to do here. Oh, I'm not finding any good ones, y'all. Oh, this was do. All right, let's do. We'll do this. Let's say we have 3 over x squared plus 3x minus 10. Minus, now this one's going to be a subtraction, 2 over x squared plus x minus 6. Now, we've got to make sure we factor the denominators when we do anything. This one's going to be x plus 5, x minus 2. This one's going to be x plus 3, x minus 2. Now, common denominator has to have the x plus 5 and the x minus 2 because that's the original. That's the original. Then we come to the second fraction. Anything they're not sharing, we have to put in the denominator. Well, notice they're sharing an x minus 2. They're not sharing the x plus 2. X plus 3, so we gotta put the x plus 3. So that's my new denominator. Which means we're gonna have to multiply the tops by something. Well, here comes my highlighter. Here's the original. What's not highlighted goes in the top. Come to the second one. Here's the original. What's not highlighted goes in the top. Now we're going to do the distributive property. Now pay attention to that minus sign. That means we're distributing a negative 2. So we'll get 3x plus 9. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10. Add the like terms and rewrite your denominator. That's your final answer. All right, let's do do another subtraction problem. Oh, let me see here. Well, we'll just do this one. Let's do x over x squared minus 2x minus 24 minus x over x squared minus 7x plus 6. Now, let's go factor this. This one is going to be x minus 6, x plus 4. This one's going to be x minus 6, x minus 1. Now, the common denominator will definitely have these two pieces. Oops, change that back to green. X minus 6, x plus 4. Oops. X minus 6, x plus 4. Whatever they're not sharing also has to go in the denominator. Notice they're sharing an x minus 6, but they're not sharing the x minus 1. So it has to go in the denominator, which means we're going to be multiplying the tops by something. All right, here comes my highlighter. These are the originals. What's not original is the x minus 1, so it's got to go up top. Highlighter. The x minus 6 and the x minus 1 are the original. What's not highlighted goes up top. Now we're going to do the distributive property. X times x is x squared minus x. Now remember, this is a negative x. Negative x squared minus 4. Combine like terms, the x squares cancel out, and we're left with this. Okay, I got some good news and bad news. This numerator can be factored. Since the negative is in front, we can factor out a negative 1. That kind of goes back to when we were doing the factor by grouping. If there was a negative in front, we factored out the negative 1, or the negative number, whichever it was. Just like when we were simplifying these expressions, factoring and crossing things out, once we get through adding and everything, we want to try to factor, and if we can, we want to cross things out. Notice I can cross that out. I'm left with a negative 1 over x minus 6, x minus 1. Some of these do take a little while to work. They can get kind of tricky. You gotta be careful. All right, let's do another one. We'll do 1 over y squared plus 2y plus 1 plus 4 over y squared plus 5y plus 4. Okay, so let's go factor the denominators. They're not terribly hard to factor. This one's x plus 1, y plus 1, y plus 1. This one's y plus 1, y plus 4. Okay. Common denominator has to have what's in the first fraction. The second denominator, if there's something they're not sharing, we have to include it. Well, notice they're sharing an x plus 1. I mean, y plus 1. They are not sharing the y plus 4, so we're going to have to put a y plus 4 in the bottom. And we're going to have to multiply the tops by something. All right, highlight. These are the originals. What I don't have highlighted goes in the top. These two pieces are the original. What I don't have highlighted goes in the top. Do the distributive property. And add like terms. We're going to get 5y plus 8 over y plus 1, y plus 1, y plus 4. There's not much else there is nothing else I can do. That's the final answer. You just got to be patient on these. They do take a little while. Got to pay attention. So, you bring down everything in the first denominator. Then you bring down from the second denominator what they're not sharing. And I think if you use the highlighter to show you what you had, it'll be easy to tell what you didn't originally have. So we're going to try these. I'm going to send you some homework. Let's just see how you do on this.